Hey, what's up guys, Benzo Figures here, and we are back with another retro review. Today we are looking at the Palisades Toys Mr. X figure from Resident Evil 2. Let's begin. So when figuring out which Mr. X figure I should get, between this one and the Toy Biz one, I opted for this one just because I collect figures mostly in the 1/12 scale, and I don't think the Toy Biz one scales with my collection too well, so. Surprisingly, this figure came out in 2002, which is over 20 years ago, so we're going to see if this figure still holds up today. So let's take a look. So this figure stands at about 8.5 inches tall. And here's Mr. X front facing. Here's him to his side profile. To the back. And to the other side. And back to the front. At a glance, this figure looks really impressive, so let's take a look at the articulation. He can look this far down and about this far up. That doesn't look like much, so let's go check it from the side. So it's about this far down and this far up. He can tilt his head, which is surprisingly a lot of range tilting his head. So far, his arms can move about this far up. Can't quite get up there, so yeah, not quite there. I can't really get him to T-pose. There's no butterfly joint, but that's okay due to the sculpt. He could bend his arm almost at 90 degrees, but not quite. His hands could fully rotate, but I'm actually surprised that there's no wrist hinge on it. For his legs, it's mostly obstructed by his trench coat and design. But without it, he could surprisingly move his legs this far forward. And he moves this far back, but surprisingly he has a lot more leg articulation than I thought he would have had. He even has a thigh swivel. His boots can rotate, but there's no articulation for his feet, so no toe pivot. So unfortunately, the rest of the accessories I have for him, I've placed in storage, so I don't have them on hand exactly. But I do remember that he comes with at least 2 sets of open hands and 2 punching hands. Unfortunately for me, my Mr. X came with 2 left punching hands, which is why I have him with 1 holding hand. But that's a factory defect, and I'm sure I'm like the outlier with the 2 left punching hands. This figure looks really cool, but he isn't without flaws. For this figure, I wish he had better articulation in his arms at least, or at least had more range in his arms. He doesn't even have a wrist hinge on his hand, so that's a bit strange. The coat really hinders his articulation in his legs, and it's hard to even get him in walking poses. And to be honest, I wouldn't know how to solve that because of the sculpt, but... my biggest issue with this figure is that his feet are a bit weird. That may sound a little weird, but here, let me show you what I mean by that. So if you have his feet facing forward, one is elevated higher than the other. So if you have him like this, it just tips over. You have to pivot 1 foot just to get him to stand correctly without the stand. So I found that to be a pretty weird design. This figure is pretty dated and it kind of shows. Like, the face is pretty weird. Like, this face is really silky smooth. But maybe it's like that in the original game and I'm just used to the remake, but I don't know about that. And also, the design isn't too accurate from his original design. From what I remember, he had more of a greenish trench coat, and he had a bit of a dulled out skin tone, and just not straight up gray. But it all works out because I actually prefer this look a lot more, because it looks more like the Resident Evil 2 remake design, which I absolutely love. So that being said, let's compare him to some other figure scale. Here he is with the Palisades Toys Tyrant from Resident Evil 1. As you can see, Tyrant is significantly taller than Mr. X. Let's see Mr. X with Nemesis, and they're surprisingly about the same height. Here's Palisades Toys Claire. Next, let's compare him to some NECA zombies, and yeah, he's way taller. Here he is with a Marvel Legends Build-A-Figure. Here he is with a custom Claire that I made. And next, let's have him with a custom Wesker that I made. Let's see him with some other Capcom figures from Jada Toys. Here he is with an older Marvel Legends Hulk. Next with a standard Marvel Legends Deadpool. So yeah, overall, echoing back to what I said earlier, despite its many flaws, it's still a pretty cool figure. The sculpt work on the trench coat and overall look is really good. A few bad things about it is that it's really limited in its articulation. The face is pretty bland looking, and its look isn't really faithful to any particular Mr. X design. So that being said, its size and look does make it look pretty menacing on the shelf, and I think it's about time that they do make a new Mr. X figure to address these issues. It's been about 20 years since we've gotten a Mr. X figure, and with the new Resident Evil reboots being super successful and popular, now it's a perfect time for Capcom to make a new Resident Evil figure line. So guys, if you enjoyed this video, please drop a like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know which toy company would you like to see make a Resident Evil figure line. So as a bonus, if you have this figure and you want to replicate his Resident Evil 2 remake design, all you need to do is have this hat from Sergeant Slaughter, and you can paint it black to replicate his design. This hat fits on perfectly and it's pretty cool. As you can see, all you have to do is just squish it down, and it's also removable too. And here's what it looks like fully painted.